Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Zombieland Double Tap. Zombieland, the original, came at a different time in kind of Hollywood, where you'd make these kind of made-to-be cult movies that would hopefully do sort of well in theaters and do extremely well on DVD. The DVD bubble burst, and so Zombieland Double Tap exists in a different kind of Hollywood where IP is king, and Zombieland, I guess, is intellectual property that a studio wants to bring back, and since literally everyone who's involved both creatively and the entire cast will come back for it, they decided, hey, let's do this again. But it really does feel like a 2009, 2010, 2008 kind of in the post Snakes on a Plane before we had Sharknado kind of world of these studios trying to make kind of cult-ish movies. Zombieland was always the more kind of mainstreamy one of those. I remember looking at it at the time as like, oh, Hollywood decides after, Shaun of the Dead sold so many DVDs and had so much social media love behind it that they wanted to make their own, zombie kind of comedy as well, which is kind of unfair, and people have called me out on that before, and I agree to a certain extent. This film feels like kind of something from a past gone era. The people who wrote and directed this film, those being Rob Reese and Paul Warnick, who wrote the last one. It was also written by Dave Callahan, who did not write the last one. They went on to write the Deadpool movies, and the director of this, Ruben Fleischer, went on to direct Gangster Squad primarily. I think that's what he's most famous for, as well as 30 Minutes or Less, and Venom, probably. So he's had an illustrious film career, and somehow I've seen all his movies, which is the thing I guess I've done. They kind of do kind of one of those cult movies in more of a lighter sort of way. It's almost like they sort of get that people like them anyway, which is presumptive. It does feel like they're being a little lighter, being a little more sequel-y, and this is kind of like a unique unto itself sort of movie in that, how did this happen? How did we get this again? How did we get this cast back? And almost playing sort of similar roles in it. Like, it's interesting that Emma Stone doesn't have a bigger role despite being probably the biggest star in the cast at this point, or that they're letting Jesse Eisenberg have such a big part despite the fact that his star is quite diminished. But they're kind of like, well, that's a Zombieland movie, and I'm sort of like, yeah, but does anyone really care? And I think that's sort of the thing with Zombieland, is that it's very set in its ways on trying to be a Zombieland movie, but you'd think because you have these people who have done creatively different things and grown, that this film would be more different, and it feels oddly the same. Now, Ruben Fleischer, I will say, is much better at making action sequences than he was in the first Zombieland, and you can definitely feel that growth over these 10 years. He's much better at staging action sequences. I wouldn't say he's like really good at it or like amazing or anything, but he is much better than he used to. And there's certain sequences. There's one sequence towards the very end, and you'll know what I'm talking about if you do see it. And actually, if you ever see this movie ending on cable, I suggest watching that part. But there's another sequence towards the middle that is also really good. I think it has some cool action set pieces, but not enough. You'd think, because Ruben Fleischer has been given so much over these 10 years and so many opportunities, I feel like he should have more cool sequences in this. That was something that I found interesting. They do have one part that's literally right at the beginning, so I'm not truly spoiling anything, where zombies kind of walk in during the Columbia logo, and the Columbia lady starts hitting them and attacking them. That was totally unexpected and really funny. I really like that part. And there are certain things that I actually really enjoyed about it, but I think because I had such low expectations as an audience member, I was sort of like sure to all of it, but I don't know if I really like the rules and the sort of blatant organization of it. And that sort of always turned me off about this, because zombie movies for me were always like these weirder, stranger, savage kind of films, and to kind of sanitize that is something I don't really want or need. And there's not so much like this film is really saying too much about society or the social aspects that you can normally do in a zombie film. It's really just telling these characters and how they're able to sort of survive in this kind of loose, fun sort of a way, but it's not really saying anything with that. It's just kind of making a very light kind of poppy zombie movie, and I don't know if necessarily we really needed that the first time around, and the second time around I don't think we needed it now either. It's also just strange, like, Like, I seriously don't get why Emma Stone would come back for this movie. I mean, I liked seeing Abigail Breslin. She's actually fairly good. Jesse Eisenberg is kind of like, feels like he's in a movie in like 2009 or 2010 or something, and Woody Harrelson is always pretty likable. Emma Stone, it's kind of weird to see her in something like this, because this, again, feels like vintage kind of Emma Stone from that era. It doesn't feel like the Emma Stone of like now, and it's sort of strange in a way, like sort of almost like didn't know how to take it, sort of. I don't think it was a bad performance. It's just sort of like I feel like you could be in like something better than this, and this role should be written better, and I'm like, I hope you're the best paid person in this movie. If you watch something like The Favorite, which most of us ended up seeing this year, and then you think of this movie, and it's like such a different actress. Maybe she just likes being there or something. I don't know. But it does sort of remind me of Deadpool. In terms of its writing, I can totally see how these are the same people who wrote Deadpool, but I think Ruben Fleischer isn't the director that either of the people who directed the Deadpool movies are, as well as I think Deadpool is like playful with its kind of like very poppiness sense. And I don't know if this is very playful. It just feels very structured and set in its kind of ways and not really breaking much out of that. And, you know, if you like Zombieland, you're gonna like Zombieland Double Tap. I think this is basically, to me, quality-wise, about the same as the original movie, maybe a little lesser. It has some interesting, like, smaller performances from people like Rosario Dawson to Luke Wilson to Thomas Middleditch. Zoe Deutsch, like, at some points got really annoying, and I get that was the point, and she's just, like, too much and in too many scenes, and clearly everyone who made this movie thought she was very funny, and as an actress, I definitely commend her commitment to it, but it got annoying after a while. When studios try to make kind of cult films, and I think some people have said a true cult movie is a movie that thought it wasn't going to be a cult movie, thought it was going to be a popular movie, and failed. I don't necessarily 100% agree with that, because like Grindhouse stuff's cult movies, and I don't think they thought that was going to blow up the world or anything, but this is kind of like trying to exactly be a cult thing was a weird area of pop culture. And it's still weird when they do it on like something like Netflix or on demand now. The difference between this and like what a cult made to be cult movie like the Banana Splits movie is you want to talk about the Banana Splits movie. Like people will sometimes say, hey, I saw that at Best Buy. Like it's a real thing. That's so weird. Like you want to tell people that concept. And I think that about even like Eraserhead or Pink Flamingos or the classic cult movies and the newer cult movies or whatever. They seem to have that kind of talkability, that concept that you're like, that was so weird. And in Zombieland Double Tap, you're like, what if it was a fun zombie movie that had no meaning to it? And I think that's kind of the thing with the Zombieland films. I never really get past sort of that. As like a fun little action thing, I guess, sure, but I've never really totally been in love with Ruben Fleischer as a director. Like the only thing I think he was really, really good at is like certain sequences in his films, like the opening of 30 Minutes or Less was fun. Like he's good at making sort of a bad watchable movie with something like Venom, but I think he's kind of just good at being like a serviceable director who you watch like junky stuff for. Each of the Zombieland movies, interestingly enough, I've had good time with friends going to see, but I don't ever like really watch these movies again. I don't really think about them that much. They're just kind of like conduits for me having good times, but the movie itself is kind of like, whatever. I think these are zombie movies for people who can't deal with a real zombie movie, because that's not what this is. This is not trying to be a zombie film. It's not trying to say anything. It's not trying to do anything with the iconography. It's trying to invent. It's very clean, very precise, very rule-heavy world. And much like how Jesse Eisenberg has all these rules to like get through this world and learn to survive, this film has done it as well, and they've done it in a very seemingly sort of organized, digestible way. And in a lot of ways, they've done it in such a precise way that it is always sort of like nicely boring in a way that's sort of entertaining, but I don't think it's one that you really don't think about or talk about Zombieland other than, you know, when it's brought up that, hey, maybe they're going to make the sequel. So they did, and so we're here, and so that was that, and that is now, and now we're double tapped out. So if you have seen Zombieland Double Tap and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.